outrage in Washington, D.C. as Anthony Fauci, the man in charge of the pandemic, said I plead the fifth over 100 times while testifying to Congress. Uh-oh. But it's not the outrage that's the lesson. It's something else. Hey, it's Rob Hunter, the ROB. What's happening with you? Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Equal Matters. We're in Maine, under cloudy skies, near the beach. Little wind might kick up in the background. Little rain might fall. But it's really important we have this discussion. Because a couple of things have changed about me. If you're unfamiliar with my background, I was on the radio for almost 30 years and covered the pandemic every single day as a talk show host in Phoenix, Arizona. Hit number one in the ratings during the pandemic because I learned a very important lesson. Two of them, as a matter of fact, as it relates to Anthony Fauci. And a background on Fauci is he's an expert on infectious diseases. But beyond that, what he became was a bureaucrat. Anthony Fauci led a department in the government that doles out taxpayer dollars to research things, whether that is AIDS research or whether that is funding a virus, or maybe that was a slip of the tongue there because there are certain allegations that either the United States government through the CIA or otherwise actually funded the lab in Wuhan, where we now believe the virus escaped from because the scientists there were playing around with the virus and one of them got sick and it started to spread and spread all around the globe. So he became an infectious disease expert, then bureaucrat who doled out this money. Then he was thrust into this position as the main mouthpiece about the pandemic and what we should do and how we should respond and whether or not we should wear masks and what the vaccine was all about. And all that's fine. The first lesson I learned is to stop getting outraged at things I cannot control, particularly when it comes to the government, because I spent most of my adult life outraged at the government. And I can even go back and cite you a book that I read that really blew my mind. It was a book called Mugged by the State. I think it came out in 2003. And my friend Shane gave it to me, who I worked with in New Orleans. And that book details all these things the government has done to screw people over. One example I'll cite for you. An older woman bought a used car. Super excited, thought she got a good deal. It was like a big car. Maybe it was like a Lincoln Continental or something along those lines. And it had a huge trunk. One day she gets pulled over by the police. I don't remember this lady's age, but let's say she was 65, maybe she's 70, maybe even a little bit older. So she complies and pulls the vehicle to the side of the road and is really nice to the cop. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, officer. What was I doing? She's like, oh, no big deal. I just was wondering if we could search the car. We have our drug-sniffing dog here. And the lady's like, of course. You can sniff my car. I am a retired lady. I've got nothing to hide. Well, the dog found something in the trunk, a hidden compartment. So once the cop opened the compartment, there was nothing inside of it, but it was the mere fact that the drug dog was alerted to the presence of drugs at some point. The cop seized her car. Another example I'll give you. Guy liked to fix classic cars, and these are both from the book Mugged by the State. And in fixing those classic cars, he would sell them. So one day he sold 2 of them, if I remember correctly, for cash money. So he's driving on home with an envelope full of cash underneath his seat when he gets pulled over. He explains to the officer that he just sold a couple of cars, but because it was over $10,000 in cash, the officer seized it because the assumption is that it's drug money if you carry that much cash on you. I don't remember the end result of that case, but I knew that that man, just like that woman, they had to, at their own expense, hire lawyers and fight the government because the police agencies were not just like handing him back the vehicle or his cash. So there are thousands and thousands and thousands of examples just like that of how you could be outraged at the government. And that's fair and it's warranted. Which brings us back to Fauci. In my opinion, there is plenty of ammunition to be outraged about with what happened during the pandemic. what the policies were, how they changed, how you were misled, how you were lied to, how fear was used to manipulate you. And that's all well and good. But I learned that lesson that is wasted energy. I used to think that this was a system that could change, that mugged by the state could be undone, that Fourth Amendment abuses could be undone. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think that this is a system that, like most systems, get too big. If you think about it like a company, my wife, Amy, just wrote a piece about Blockbuster on her LinkedIn page and how Blockbuster missed the Netflix buyout because Netflix came to Blockbuster and said, hey, you want to buy us? This was right when they're starting their mail service, the DVD. But as Amy points out in her article, the business model that Blockbuster had was the opposite of Netflix's model. So they said no, because they were making so much money on late fees that they didn't see a revenue path by mailing DVDs out. So they said no, and we know the end result. Netflix is in millions of homes, not only in the United States, but around the world. Blockbuster is nowhere to be found. There may be one Blockbuster left. Even that might have closed. There was a documentary about it at one point. I think it was in Bend, Oregon. I don't know if it's still there. But you get the point. That's the government. The government is Blockbuster. The point that Amy's making is that Blockbuster got too big to be able to pivot because their models, the way that they made money, was built on an old system that technology could wipe away. So a new system came in with Netflix and replaced Blockbuster. I think that that's really the change that we're going to seek when the government is kind of a government 2.0 model. But we'll worry about that another day because that's a big asking and a big undertaking. So the second lesson in learning through Anthony Fauci and covering the pandemic every day as a radio show host in Phoenix, Arizona, in which we were the number one rated show, because this is what we talked about. You are your own authority. End of story. You make the decisions for you, not Anthony Fauci, not the president, whoever the president may be. And that's the reality of it. That's the big lesson that no one's talking about when it comes to Fauci's Fifth Amendment pleading over 100 times. Because it's easy to get outraged about that. It's easy to look back in the past and say, well, that guy was terrible. He shouldn't have been in charge, but he was. We can't change the past. All we can do is move forward. And what I've learned in lessening my outrage at things I cannot control, thank you to the Stoics, they had a belief they passed down 2,000 years ago called the dichotomy of control. And the whole point of that belief is you're in charge of you. And you can only control you. You cannot control what anybody else does, what anybody else says. You can only control your reaction to it. So in learning these lessons through the pandemic, it's one of the main reasons why I left my radio career behind. Because I thought change could come through a microphone. I was wrong. It's going to take more than a microphone. It's going to take hundreds and thousands and millions of microphones to change. Millions of us who are standard bearers who understand that we are our own authority. That we make our decisions, regardless of what someone else says. But see, that's why fear is often used and has been used throughout the eons of humanity. Because what it does is it puts us in a scarcity state. It puts us in a reactive state. Whereas if Fauci or a politician or a president says, millions of people will die from this pandemic, well, you think you might be one of those millions. So your body will react, whether you know it or not, subconsciously, consciously, and you'll be in a fear state. And when you're in a fear state, you give up your own authority often. And you will cede to a Fauci or a politician or a president, thinking that they know better than you. So the way I talked about the pandemic was I broke it down into risk categories. I, at the time, was in my mid-40s, I'm now closing in on my upper 40s, almost 50. And I was healthy. I work out. So I knew my risk tolerance of severe reaction was low. And that's how you have to weigh these things, based on the reality of you. And being your own authority is where that comes into place. And this is what I mean when I say I work with standard bearers. People who understand they are their own authorities. There's a certain boldness to that. And standard bearers are visible and out front. Their own authorities. Now, oftentimes we don't know how to broadcast that in the right ways. So that's the work that I help you do, is being able to communicate your standards and why they're different and why your own authority, or why your authority is owned by you. That's the essence of the lesson that Fauci teaches us. So while he won't answer questions, it doesn't matter. To me, it used to matter. I'll admit it. It's easy to get mad about it. But what's not so easy is to say, what if I created my own little bubble that I live in? Because this is another lesson that I've learned. My reality is much closer to me than I thought. I thought my reality extended far beyond me, that what was happening in Washington, D.C. was happening to me. But it's not really. Not at all. Could it happen to me? Sure. Could an example like the old lady and the guy who fixed the cars happen to me? Absolutely it could. But being my own authority, I know what I would do in those cases. And I'm the only one that can take action in those cases. So when it comes to the pandemic, I said on the air, it doesn't matter what's happening in the world because my role is to live in it. So it doesn't matter who the president is, I still live in the world. It doesn't matter what the virus is doing, I still live in the world. And thankfully for me, I was in a low risk category. So I went about my business. I was very careful because I didn't want to get other people sick. I took that very seriously. And I really made it a game. I tried to bob and weave away from the virus. And I actually hid from it for 2.5 years. I didn't get COVID 2.5 years into the pandemic. Although, truth be told, I think I was an early patient because we traced that, I forget, January, some of the cases came in. And then March, the shutdown happened. I'm pretty sure I got COVID at a big event in December. So I might have had some immunity at play here. But December was before anybody knew what COVID was. But if you trace back to the lab leak theory, it's right around then. So let's say that it's late November, early December 2019 when the virus leaks. Well, because of air travel, it's very easily possible that COVID spread much more early than we thought. And because there was no panic about it, we didn't shut down anything. But when the panic started, that's when everything shut down. And that's when we started treating each other differently. Because we cede our own authority. And we think that, well, my opinion and what I'm doing about the pandemic is exactly what you should be doing. But that's not the way it works. And that's not the way it will ever work. Going back to the Stoics and what they taught us. So the point here in all of this is you can get outraged at Fauci if you want. That's fine. Understandable. I choose not to because he doesn't impact my world. His avoiding answers doesn't impact my world. Me and my people that are around me impact my world, my bubble, my reality. And in that bubble and reality, I'm the authority in it. And this has really caused me to rethink so many different things in my life. And how much more, I don't know if powerful is the right word, but how much more in touch with myself I am. How much more honest I am with myself and how much more confident I am in the way that I live my life, not comparing it to other people and not expecting other people to do the same. So again, to me, this comes back to this idea of being the standard bearer. And you got to be that in your own life. Your flag, how you hold it, how bold you are, how visible. Because what was missing during the pandemic was standard bearers. There's a lot of complaining, a lot of outrage, a lot of fear, but not enough people that were like, I'm going to live my life my way. Whatever the authorities say, I'm still going to do my thing. It doesn't mean you have to yell it. You don't have to shout it. You don't have to be righteous about it. You just have to do it. You just have to live it. And yeah, here's the thing about being a standard bearer and why so many people don't want to be one. It comes with arrows. If you're the standard bearer, you're out front. You're going to take criticism. So a big part of being a standard bearer is learning how to deal and manage criticism, how much it matters to you, and how to get quote-unquote thick skin. But that's all part of it. So I bring this up just to remind you that you are your own authority, and you are your own standard bearer. And if you want more information about how to broadcast this as a business owner or as a leader, so you get the right clients, you grow your business, you build the right team, you grow your team the right ways, hit me up. It's your boy, the ROB. Thanks for hanging for another edition of Equal Matters. We're not outraged. We remain in the clouds, looking at the water. Cheers.